Chapter 3. The something else thing. Again. Malcolm looked very hard at Uncle Gobb as he was moving his chair. The dog looked very hard at Uncle Gobb as he was moving Malcolm's chair. Malcolm, who you'll remember is not going to put up with any more of Uncle Gobb's secret plans to get rid of him and Cracker-Snacker, again said, "Uncle Gobb, why are you moving my chair?" Uncle Gobb raised his hand in the air, breathed in and said, yes, that's one of your questions, isn't it, Malcolm?" Yes, it is. It's a question. It's the kind of question that's very like a question. In fact, it's not only like a question, it's a question. Yes, well done, Malcolm. "Uncle Gobb," Malcolm said sternly, "why are you moving my chair?" Just then, Mum walked in. Her eyes were almost shut. Uncle Gobb looked as if Mum walking in was something he really didn't want to happen. "Derek," said Mum, "why are you moving Malcolm's chair in the middle of the night?" Uncle Gobb looked to and fro, started to go red, suddenly found that he had got a wedgie, tried to get the wedgie out, scratched his head, cleared his throat, cleared his throat again, and said, "I need it, Tessa." Malcolm thought of Uncle Gobb trying to sit down and squeezing into his little chair. "But your bum will get stuck," Malcolm said. Mum took a different line. Malcolm knew that Mum tried to look after Uncle Gobb. She was Uncle Gobb's sister, after all. Malcolm knew that no matter how horrible Uncle Gobb was, he needed Mum to look after him, and Mum was kind enough to do so. "Well, Derek," she said as kindly as she could, "Malcolm likes that chair. The dog likes that chair. You can't just take it." Uncle Gobb went on standing in the middle of the room, clearing his throat and removing wedges, or imaginary wedges. Interesting note here, in the book Imagine the Imaginary, under the letter I, it has imaginary wedges. An imaginary wedgie is the wedgie you think you have when you're feeling awkward. No matter how hard you try to get rid of the imaginary wedgie, it goes on being an imaginary wedgie. Famous people who've had imaginary wedges include Jeremiah Worksheet, who invented the worksheet, Henry VIII, and Reggie Wedgie. Weasel 1. Do weasels have wedgies? Weasel 2. No. Weasel 1. Good. "Well, Derek," Mum said, "the best thing for all of us, I think, is if you head off back to bed. Just then, a voice outside said, in an "I'm trying to be quiet" voice, "Ready when you are, Derek." Mum looked at Uncle Gobb, then went over to the back door, opened it and looked out. A man with a very thick neck and wearing gloves was standing there. Straight away he stepped forward and made a move to take Malcolm's little chair. Uncle Gobb shook his head very hard, as if to say, "Don't do it." The man stopped in his tracks. He could see that something wasn't right. Mum, whose eyes were now a little bit more open, looked from one to the other. Malcolm looked past the man to something outside. Outside was the dread shed. If you know what the dread shed is, you can miss out the next chapter. If you don't know what the dread shed is, you too can miss out the next chapter, but then you won't know what the dread shed is. You might think it's a kind of ghost cucumber, or a shed with dreadlocks, or a shed that was supposed to be the red shed, but someone called it the dread shed by mistake. It's up to you, really.